Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Zur. I'm the chair of the Public Policy Committee for the Independence Chamber of Commerce. I'm happy to welcome you here to the first, good morning, Mayor, to the first legislative briefing for 2022. We have two legislators joining us this morning. Representative Rory Rowland here in person and Representative Robert Sauls, who is on the screens back behind us here. Representative Sauls, are you able to hear and see?
I am. I'm in the process of getting my son ready for school, so I can hear you. I'm listening.
I will not call on you directly. We're going to go ahead and do some announcements first, and I'll let you go. So you take care of what you need to on your side. When I see it pop back in the screen, we're good to go. Okay.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
He's
okay.
eating breakfast.
For those of you that are here in person, we do have coffee, juice, water, and bagels over on the far side of the room. Please feel free to do so. And a couple of individuals I'd like to make sure and introduce before we start. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce Paula Mckinnea, the newest member of the chamber staff, joining as administrative assistant. Paula, pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. And we also have three of our elected officials here in the room as well. Mayor Weir joining us for Independence. Thank you again, Mayor Weir. It's good to see you. And Mayor Larson from Sugar Creek. Sorry, I'm coming to you. and Councilwoman Karen DeLucci. So we are joined by a couple, and we're going to give each of you the opportunity to speak at some point or another here today. I think we'll have time for that. A couple of quick announcements before we move any further. We have the upcoming municipal candidate forums coming up on Wednesday, February 2nd. The at-large city council candidates, that'll be at 7 p.m. for the candidate forum at the Fairmount Community Center, 217 South Cedar Avenue. And then on Thursday, February 3rd, we have the candidates for mayor at the 7 p.m. timeframe, also at the Fairmount Community Center, 217 South Cedar Avenue. So if you're interested in the upcoming local municipal candidate elections, those are two dates to write onto your calendars. For chamber specific activities, on January 24th, we have the chamber luncheon with featuring Governor Mike Parson. And then February 16th, we have the February luncheon featuring Zach Walker, city manager, each of whom will be speaking for the full crew of the luncheon. So do we still have spaces available for both those? We don't have space available for the 24th luncheon. So if you got that announcement and you're excited about doing so, I'm sorry, Mike Parson will not be option for you. How about the February 16th? Do we still have options available for February 16th? Come see Zach Walker. Okay, and then on March 1st, gosh, I got a ton of paper up here to go through, guys. I'm sorry. March 1st, we have the Legislative Advocacy Day in Jefferson City. It's $25 per person. It's a co-hosted event with the Blue Springs Chamber, the Grandview Chamber, our chamber, Lee Summit Chamber, Raytown Chamber, and the South Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. Exciting opportunities for that day, starting at 10 a.m. when we will arrive at the Missouri Chamber of Commerce building down in Jeff City. We'll get an update on workforce development, have lunch, and then a legislative update with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We then have an opportunity to meet with the governor and Senate and House leadership between 12:45 and 3 o'clock, and then meetings with individual representatives before returning at 5 p.m. Tom, just out of curiosity, do we have transportation arranged for that for individuals, or is it a drive yourself? So more people that show up, the more likelihood you're going to get to ride in the chamber van. So contact Tom in advance or sign up online. Registration online at the chamber website. Also wanted to invite your attention to the 2022 legislative agenda, one-page sheet. Yeah, it's got a lot of words on it, but it is what the Public Policy Committee has produced for this year based upon input from our membership and assorted individual groups within the city of Independence. It qualifies for it has been approved by the board as of last month with a slight change. So we do have that before you. I'll ask the legislators who are joining us today, Representative Sauls, I'm sorry, you probably don't have this right in front of you, but you can lead off of Representative Rowland. How's that?
Well, we've actually been texting each other and
he's going to go first.
He's going to go first. If that's okay with you, Representative.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I thank you for that. for that opportunity, and I appreciate the ability to go first. So I guess ultimately, I guess what we're talking about is essentially what we're doing right now. Redistricting is the first thing that we're dealing with. And we passed a 6-2 map out of the House this week that'll go over to the Senate. Who knows what will happen there, whether or not it'll change, whether or not it'll stay. I'm sure they'll probably do something to it as of right now. We really don't know until it's all said and done, how everybody, what they're going to do and weigh in on and make it different. One of the important things is the emergency clause is needed ultimately for this to be in play before August. There are different schools of thought. I don't know that it qualifies under the definition of an emergency under the state statute. I mean, I guess there's potentially you could make an argument for it, but I'm kind of the opinion it doesn't actually fit that definition, but we'll see how that plays out. Another thing we're looking at, the supplemental budget is one of the other key things that we're going to work on in the first few weeks. We've got some money. I know that the governor has proposed a raise in state pay, which is something that I think we're going to, I've got a visitor here as well. Raise in state pay is something that I think we are going to address. I think that's very much needed. Missouri is 49th, 48th in the country in state pay. I, as a previous state employee, and I've worked I was a prosecutor and a public defender. And I've seen, many of the clerks, the court clerks are work as state employees, and it's desperately needed for them. In addition to that, there are other, I'm a member of the Missouri Veterans Commission, and many of the folks who work and take care of our veterans in these nursing homes are not making good pay either. So I mean, I think there's a lot of good that would come from this, and so that's something that I know that we're working on. And so those are two of the main things that I know we're going to be working on early on. We've got other bills, obviously, that we're dealing with. I know it's an election year, so any number of great pieces of legislation are going to come through. I don't know. Let's see. I know one of my main things, what I'd really like to do, what I'm working on, I filed a bill to deal with the unemployment overpayment issues. I have personally, as an attorney, I've done some of these on the, I guess you'd say, civilian side. I've helped folks in these matters in front of a referee. And I think that it's just something that is what you find is that most of the time, these folks, it's not really through their own fault. It's really through the state of Missouri, but basically the state of Missouri is alleging that they've been overpaid these unemployment benefits. And now they're being asked to come back and pay $5,000, $10,000. And quite frankly, these are people who were without work. And, my stance is that the economy really didn't take the hit that it could have. The economy during the pandemic, it had its problems, right? We did have problems, but ultimately, if you can imagine, if you took, I don't know, 20% of the workforce and basically made it so that they didn't have any income, you can imagine what would happen from that in a way of, from rent to housing to, it would create a big mess that was, I think the economy floated along, quite frankly, because of these payments. And now what we're doing is we're asking folks to come back and pay $10,000 that they don't have. So, and then when there's no fraud on their part, and it's really a matter of the state of Missouri saying that these were overpaid. It's difficult. And the other side of that is you have to hire an attorney. Well, you don't have to, but you appeal it before a referee, and most people, it's kind of like the property tax situations we've had too, where you kind of go in without representation if you don't have the money for it or the ability, and it's quite daunting, and people going before trying to make a case, not knowing the law necessarily or their understanding of the law without having the backing of an attorney, and it's difficult because attorneys obviously we're going to want to get paid, and it's, you know, to pay an attorney $2,000 so that you might not have to pay $10,000, and maybe you have to pay $10,000. You don't actually know. And I just think it's a big problem, and I hope that we can address it. I filed a bill to address it, to deal with both the state and the federal portion. I know my colleague, Senator Beck, he filed a bill, and actually it was heard on Thursday. So it looks like there is some movement. His bill is a little bit different than mine. I believe his just addresses the state portion. Mine addresses both. But you know, for anybody who's struggling with that, I'd encourage you to contact your state representative. You can contact me. I've been trying to help folks, not just you know, from the lawyer side as well as on the state rep side. So I think that's a very important issue, and I'm hoping we can gain some traction on that.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Sauls. Sure appreciate that. And again, Representative Robert Sauls, first elected in November 2018, ranking minority member on Crime Prevention Committee, and also serves on emerging issues, ethics, judiciary, and veterans. As a fourth generation resident of Independence, raising his son Jackson, still here in Independence, and previously serving both as Jackson County prosecutor as well as a public defender. Sorry, Jackson County prosecuting attorney. I didn't get the opportunity to introduce you, Representative Sauls, so I apologize for that.
I'm sorry. I think I went straight into that.
That's all right. You got the invitation from Representative Rowland. I sure wasn't going to step on his toes either. So before we move on, are there any questions for Representative Sauls before we hear from Representative Rowland? Any questions at all? Anything online, Tom?
I have one. This is Dale Hurl.
Go for it, Dale.
Hi, Representative Sauls.
Hi.
I have a question for you. I
Sure.
listened to the governor's speech regarding education funding, wanting to move the base teacher pay, you know, to a minimum of 38,000. We're higher than that here in Independence. One of the things that was not touched on by the governor specifically was transportation funding. He alluded to fully funding the formula, which we've done,
Right.
and we're grateful, but school districts get pennies on the dollar for what it costs to transport kids, which is really money that we have to take out of the classroom to get kids. What are your thoughts on an appropriation bill, separate one for transportation funding, or do you see any of that going anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I'm well aware of this issue. Thank you for bringing it up. It is very much an issue throughout the state. If you can imagine some places that, I mean, Independence is fairly compact. I recognize there are still problems with transportation there, but even, you go out to parts of Missouri, rural Missouri, where kids are transported a long way, and that does matter. I think that's something you've mentioned is we have not done that. We've funded the foundation formula, but you're right. We haven't done that on the transportation side. I certainly support it. I'm sure Representative Rowland there supports it. I know we in the past have tried to up those numbers to try to cover that. Quite frankly, my position is Missouri right now is pretty flush with cash as far as the federal money, and we are in a position where we can actually do that. I know there are a lot of issues we're trying to cover, but I do think that is one that we should. And quite frankly, whether or not it gets any traction in the full House and the Senate, I don't know. I mean, I know that we've argued it before. I know we've pushed for it before, and I'll certainly will push for it again. I think it is. I am well aware of the situation. I know we're not doing it, and I will do my best to raise it as an issue that we cover on the ultimate budget.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Anyone else?
Jonathan, we did have a question from the chat. Steve Potter from Mid-Continent Public Library was asking Representative Sauls, House Bill 2210 will be heard in committee next week. He feels this is important to Missouri's public library community. Wanted to Representative Sauls had any thoughts on that or any information about that?
I don't, which one is, I guess I don't know which one 210 is when sometimes numbered, particularly this early in session.
I think Representative Rowland is able to step in on that comment.
Okay.
If you're able to do so.
And just to clarify, is this the bill referring to for the libraries using their electronic books and their electronic resources?
Hey, Tom, everyone, this is Steve Potter. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the one that encourages
Okay.
the negotiation between libraries and publishers. And so libraries buy it, you know, a rate that is similar to consumers. So.
Right. And Steve, if you could take a moment and kind of, because when you called me this summer and we talked about it, there's some nuances that we all need to be aware of, and I'm not an expert in this. Do you mind kind of bringing that up and clarifying what the details are so we know about it, and we can talk about the bill for a second?
Yeah, happy to do that if that's the pleasure of the group. So so what this bill does, it is modeled on legislation that was passed in Maryland and New York most recently. And what it does is it encourages publishers to negotiate with public libraries to license e-content to libraries at a rate that is reasonably the same as they do to consumers. So if you go to Amazon.com and you download an ebook or you download an audiobook, it might cost you, let's just for sake of argument, say $15. The way licensing programs work for us is that lots of times we have to rebuy the license every 24 months. Lots of times we're asked to pay more, up to 2.5 times more on average. And so over a 10-year period, for example, a book will cost libraries via your tax money about $185 for us to buy that one book and make it available for you, as opposed to $15, which is what it would cost us to buy it in physical format. Digital format, as we discovered through the pandemic, is growing. It's what people want. It's what kids need in order to access through schools, through collaborations like we have with Dr. Hurl. And right now, libraries feel like publishers are taking advantage and overcharging and making us use more of your tax money compared to other organizations. So what the bill does is it asks that publishers no longer unilaterally create licensing guidelines, that they have to sit down with libraries, negotiate, and they have to provide guidelines, and they have to provide a license that is similar, reasonable, but similar to what you would find from a consumer. We did work, as Representative Rowland said, I spoke with him this summer about it. I also worked with the Attorney General's office to make sure that we were coding this correctly and it would make sense. So Representative Hurlburt from north of the river is actually the bill's sponsor, and lots of other folks statewide, I believe, are beginning to come on board as co-sponsors. So hopefully that wasn't too much, but that's the basics of the bill.
I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you. I'd also note on here that it is part of our 2022 legislative agenda as part of the Independence Chamber of Commerce. It's the fourth item down as an ongoing support for the library's activities and efforts along those lines. So I'll open it up to either of the representatives who are interested in speaking or responding to that.
Is this one hot? Absolutely. I'm completely and absolutely in favor of it. Is this, do you know if it's hot or not? The screen's on.
Yes.
So it's hot. Thank you. But, you know, as a library user, and I go through just tons of audiobooks, and I just love the library for audiobooks, and I would be on there, and, you know, one year the audiobook would be on there, the next year it wouldn't. And I would call them up and say, why isn't it there? And they'd say, because we got to rebuy a license, which I thought was, you know, once you have it, you have it. I thought it was like a library book. Once it's in your stacks, you don't lose it, it's yours. But that's not the case. And so I would be highly in favor of this. I don't want to speak for Representative Sauls, but I haven't found anybody has any resistance in Jeff City yet for it. We'll see about the process, but you know, that's my thoughts on it. Representative Saul, as I jumped into your frame there.
That's perfectly fine. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. You know, I would essentially echo those sentiments. I think Rory's correct. Also, I would say, quite frankly, it's a lot of times based on where it is in session. You know, it's so early in session, and the fact that this is something that appears to be gaining some ground this early on, I think that's actually a very good sign that that there could potentially be success with the bill. I'm other than that, I would agree with pretty much everything that Representative Rowland has said.
Any other questions from the group? Tom, I'm looking for you. Any other electronic online? Okay. If there are no other questions, Representative Sauls, thank you so much for the input. Please feel free to stay online. If you have to get back to preparing for school, I totally understand that. Next, we have Representative Rory Rowland today joining us. Representative Rowland represents District 29, elected originally in 2015. He is the ranking minority member on Financial Institutions Committee and serves on the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. Lives in Independence and operates Rowland Consulting, where he speaks to business groups. Representative Rowland, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. As always, you did a great job. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. And it's just my honor and pleasure to serve you in the legislature. This has been a really unique year in how it started out. Representative Sauls talked a little about the redistricting. That's going to take up a tremendous amount of our time. We, in fact, voted this week and third read the bill out of the House for redistricting, which would be a redistricting map for the congressional districts of a 6-2 map. There was actually discussion of moving it to a 7-1 map. And with a supermajority in the House of Representatives and the Senate, if they wanted to push to a 7-1 map, they probably could have, which would have meant that they would have, sliced and diced St. Louis or Kansas City in such a way that no Democratic Congresswoman or man could be elected there. So that was the big, debate this week. There were some really heated committee hearings on that regard. If you want to look them up and watch them online, fascinating stuff. It was, how should we say, spirited. It was spirited discussion. And so that's the joy of Jefferson City, the spirited discussion. So we had a lot of that, but that's the only thing, that's the only major thing that we've dealt with so far. Obviously, we've got the budget issues we've got to address in that regard. But those are it's just really, really slow. The first 2 weeks are really slow. If I were in leadership, I would have us start having committee hearings, particularly on a second year like this, where people don't have to worry about people being sworn in. Start committee hearings, October, November, get some things ready to go. So we start week 1 to do that. The downside of that is this: the House of Representatives could do a lot of bills that will, in fact, if you've ever seen the Capitol and walk from the House to the Senate side, there's this big hole in the floor. A lot of the things that we do in the House of Representatives end up in that big hole in the floor. So, and it's basically, the reason it's done that way is you've got all of these people who, particularly you've got a supermajority, you've got 115 people begging for a bill, and their leadership has to do, okay, everybody gets one, and you got to do all of that stuff, and there's no way the Senate's going to deal with that. So anyway, that's kind of the process. So we're there a lot of times to satisfy the ego desires of majority members who want to get a bill heard before. Anyway, to say it like that. But anyway, that's where we're at right now. Not anything too exciting. It's moving very, very slow, which is extremely typical this time of the year. It really doesn't start to cook until mid-February, when you've got a lot of committee hearings. I mean, we've only had one bill voted out of financial institutions so far. We voted it out Wednesday night. So it's just a very slow process at the start. It's like a big flywheel. It takes a while for it to go. Anyway, with that being said, I'll be happy to open it up to the floor and see if anybody has any questions.
No questions. Tom, anything online?
And that's typically people really don't want to know what I think. So that's not uncommon. I'm used to that response. So
I have a question. This is Mark. Hi, Rory.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Mark. Or hi, Rory. It's Mark. This hadn't really ever been addressed, but I had a situation with my son about 6 months ago where he's hit by a drunk driver and basically nearly lost his life. He's not going to be in good shape for a while, but the negligent party had insurance, but it was the stated Missouri limits of $25,000 each person, $50,000 incident. and 25,000 property damage. And I think those bodily injury items were probably established about 4 decades ago. And we know with inflation, medical costs, and everything, it's a drop in the bucket. And while you may have other insurances to help with direct medical, the pain and suffering and the ability to, have a quality of life for another 4 or 5 decades of his life is going to be greatly hampered. And is there ever been any talk about raising those limits of 25 and 50 for bodily injury up to double that or triple that or something?
You bring up a great point. I've got to ask you, Mark, did Eric text that question to you to tee it up?
No.
And the reason did he text that to you?
No. And
okay.
but we are cohorts in crime, of course.
The reason I say that, and the reason I asked that question is, it was last year, wasn't Eric? 2 years ago, Eric actually reached out to me on exactly this issue. And so I introduced a bill on it 2 years ago. I don't think I reintroduced it last year. I may have reintroduced it last year. We just never get traction on it. And this year I have not reintroduced it, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mark, the Missouri Association of Insurance Agents, they have brought this to the legislators several years. It's a tough one to get through, as you know, the insurance companies.
Yes.
They did raise the property damage liability minimum from 10 to 25 as a result of that, but there's been no movement on the liability side that I know of.
The BI side. Okay. Well, I think it ought to be pushed because it's, 4 decades of having those limits in place. It's pretty ridiculous.
I agree with you completely. And I was glad that Eric brought that to my attention. He was right on the issue. But the question is, once we started to push it in Jefferson City, man, the pushback was just tremendous.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised by it because, I think it'd be easier to sell the insurance. Here's the state minimum. You got to buy that. That's it. So I was just surprised that it got pushed back that it did. Anyway, but thank you for that, Mark. And I'm sorry about your son's accident, and I'm glad he's doing better. So thank you for that question.
One question that was sent in regarding the governor's State of the State address. There was a mention about $25 million for industrial site development. Any background on what that is, how to access it, any specifics on that?
Yeah, in the state, 25 million for that's not a very big project. I mean, that would even build half of the money we needed for the UMKC Music Conservatory across the street. Actually, that would have been maybe about a third of that project. So we're not talking much money. I don't have any background on it. I don't know if Representative Sauls is still on the screen or not. Representative Sauls, do anything about that one?
I'm sorry, I caught a bit of that. Talking about the State of the State address, and what was it again? 25 million. I caught part of it.
Yeah, there was a reference to $25 million being set aside for industrial site development, but no specifics behind that.
I don't know, but I can certainly find out. That sounds, I think that's something, a lot of times before that, we don't necessarily know what he's going to say before he does it. So, but to get it, we can certainly figure that out. I can ask a question, and I'll see what I can find out.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Mayor, did you have seemed like you got a thought on that or something?
No, I was just asking if it was 25 million total, or if it was 25 million per site. So the concept is 25 million total.
That's how I understood it.
For the entire state, which is
right.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with you completely. 25 million for the entire state's a drop in the bucket when you're talking about a $36 billion budget. So, okay. Anybody else?
Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Here we go. Okay, back on. So we are at 9 o'clock right now. We've gone 30 minutes for our discussions with the representatives, but we also have a number of other elected officials here in the room, and I'm going to make sure and invite them to come forward or to stand up at their seats and speak if they'd like. We'll start off with Mayor Weir. Mayor Weir from Independence. If you've got anything you want to add to today's legislative briefing, welcome to come on up.
I'll come up here so the people and TV land can see us too. So thank you. It's good to be back for this year's legislative briefings. I just wanted to touch on a few things that are on the chamber's legislative agenda that we're working on. Obviously, it's very, very early, but you know, we're already very active in some of these areas. I'm going to start with the infrastructure items. Obviously, we're continuing to work on the federal funding for the infrastructure bill, which is right now at a halt in Washington, D.C., but continuing to work with our Congress people and senators to try to keep moving that forward. Our number one request out of that money is Missouri Highway 7, which would grant access to more industrial development in the Little Blue Valley and take some traffic off of the Little Blue Parkway. So that goes to Lake City, which is obviously one of our most important employers and needs better and safer access. So that one we are still working on. Regarding funding for bridge, roads, transit, commuter rail, and pedestrian trail options in Eastern Jackson County, some of you may be aware that Congressman Cleaver and Congresswoman Sharice Davids in Kansas are working together with Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Missouri, and Independence to create a green transit corridor that would go all the way from Kansas City, Kansas through Kansas City to Independence along the 24 highway route. So that would include fare-free, emission-free, rapid bus service. That would sort of be the spine of the project, but also to include infrastructure improvements that we certainly desperately need, sidewalks, stormwater, and then really branching out a half mile to a mile off of that 24 highway corridor for housing, for workforce development, for additional commercial and business development to really revitalize that corridor. So there is, we have engaged to represent the City of Independence, CFS Engineering, who I know some of you are familiar with because they helped us with the downtown redevelopment plan, some plans in Fairmount. They're currently helping us with the On the Roll Committee, which the chamber is represented on. Congressman, it's just a massive project. It's really being, you know, facilitated through Mid-America Regional Council, and we simply don't have the staff time available to do the amount of research and financial analysis to provide the congressmen and congresswomen with the information that they need. But you know, we're putting together a proposal which the Congressman Cleaver has asked for, you know, towards the middle of this month, and they're working with the Treasury to try to secure funding for this bi-state project. So it's very, very exciting opportunity for us, and we're spending a lot of time working with our consultants to gather the information. The Kansas City Airport renaming for President Harry Truman. As most of you know, I serve on the board of the trustees for the Truman Library Institute. We had our board meeting yesterday. This is an item that is continuing to move forward and gain traction. This afternoon, I am meeting with Councilwoman Raina Park Shaw, who represents the eastern part of Kansas City, closest to Independence. She's coming over for a lunch and a tour of the library. This is going to be a decision made by the Kansas City City Council. So members of the Truman Library Institute Board and other civic leaders in the community are having meetings with the council members, with the mayor, with members of the civil rights community and others, members of the Northland Chamber, Platte County Chamber, Platte County EDC, everybody you can think of who has an interest in this airport to promote the idea of naming it for Harry Truman. And I know that the Independence Chamber was one of the first to give their official endorsement for this idea, and it is continuing to move forward, and hopeful that we may have a vote by the Kansas City Council, maybe mid-year. We haven't really received any opposition to this idea. There seems to be a tremendous amount of support, and so we're continuing to work on that. I'm going to move down to governmental regulations. Support of establishment of a charter review commission. We continue to see why this would be a very good idea for speaking of things that are decades old. Our charter has not been reviewed in a very, very long time. And while there are some great things in it, and I believe the intent of it was absolutely correct, it's outdated. There's things that we find that become stumbling blocks for us to be able to make clear decisions. So we look forward to more discussion regarding that. Municipal courts, I know that Representative Hafner has pre-filed some bills regarding this. Last time I talked to him, he was looking for a Senate sponsor. We are supporting this and providing him with information, really dependent upon law enforcement to be pretty heavily involved with that, but we're continuing to work on it. And I know it's something that Jonathan is very, very interested in as well. There's all kinds of bills filed regarding changing election laws, election dates. There's a bill that was filed that said any member of the legislature can serve as ex officio on the city council, the planning commission, the school board. So there's all kinds of bizarre things being suggested that we're tracking very, very closely. So I just wanted to provide those updates.
That one's insane. That ex officio. Sorry.
What's the downside?
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started. Mayor, thank you very much. Any questions for the mayor before she sits down? Nothing? Okay. Tom, anything online? Mayor, again, thank you very much for the update on that one. Yeah, you hit on a couple of big ones for us. Yes.
Can you hear me? Dan Hobart.
Yeah, but I'm going to call on you in a little while. But that's okay. What do you got, Dan?
No. Carry on. Waiting for you.
Remember the point. I promise I'll come back to you. Okay, so very good input regarding that. Yes, I supportive of the charter review. In fact, Mayor, thank you very much for running down the list of items here. You did bring a couple of them that are not on the list that we didn't know were going to be filed that I think are important for the chamber to consider. Again, the ex officio item is just an insane concept for inclusion there for individuals to participate there at the local level. I have all kinds of concerns with that. Next up, Mayor Larson from Sugar Creek. Mayor, anything you want to add to our conversation today? Why don't you come on up? That way we can get you on speaker too. So people. No, but I got to get you on the audio.
I am very appreciative of continuing to be asked back and contribute what little bit I can contribute. I'd like to echo what Mayor Ware was talking about. This was an incredible opportunity to work with the people to put this document together. A lot of people asking, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? It's a lot of good give and taking, a lot of good transparent communication and stuff. So it's really fun to work on that. And I think it's a great document. I'd like to echo what Mayor Ware was talking about the changes in election dates, election districts, and on and on and on and on there. It's just absolutely insane and stuff. Things are going well in Sugar Creek. We got our Taco Bell opening. It's a nice, clean, bright facility, and I hope we spark some more development along that 24 and Sterling area right there and stuff. Other than that, that is about it. Anyway, that's plenty good for now. So thank you.
Any questions? Yes. Councilwoman, what's your question?
My question regarding Sugar Creek and Independence, we used to be jointly against that awful, excuse me, I'm sorry, Tom. We were against that awful pit in the old car wash place or car, dry. Okay, we used to buy awful cars there. And then we got a big deal. Then we filed suit You people in Sugar Creek fixed it. I want to know, where are we? Do we owe you money? Tell me. And I'm sure they should. That stopped 24 Highway. That was a terrible location and you fixed it. Sugar Creek, thank you.
In case you're not aware of what Councilwoman DeLucci is talking about, there's a hole in the ground formerly called Best Buy Auto. A sinkhole developed about 2015, give or take, before I became mayor. It rained, it flooded, it rained, it flooded, it closed down 24 Highway. I came on board in 2017. Mayor, you can't touch this. This is a private citizen on private property doing his own private thing and stuff. And after a couple of years, I was actually St. Patrick's Day 2020. I went to our lawyers and I say, can we declare an emergency in a health situation? And she goes, yeah, you can do anything you want to. You're mayor. And then I do it and then I get in trouble, so it's really interesting how that works out. But anyway, we came up with a document that said this rain, flooding, closing 24 Highway is causing a health and safety concern because these big 18-wheelers have to turn down Willow and get to wherever they're going because they have to bypass 24 Highway right there. We hired Wilson of Will Pave Construction. They brought in a huge backhoe and cleaned out the hole as soon as they took off the cover of the 8-foot by 8-foot by 30-foot long concrete box. The water flowed and was done, and it hasn't flooded since then. Thank you for that. I had nothing to do with it other than Mrs. Lauber, or no, Jennifer Baird from Lauber. I said, can we do this? And she goes, yeah, we can do it. And the councilman supported me and stuff. So that was my small part in that and stuff. Where are we now? We just, let's see, my city administrator went to the hearing Monday. Yeah, it was Monday, or no, not Monday, Martin Luther King. Tuesday, went to the hearing Tuesday for the condemnation hearing. And the judge at that time took both sides' information under advisement, and he will get back to us. So when I know something, you will know something. So that's where we are. We filed a lawsuit to condemn the property, get possession of it, and do something cool, neat, and exciting with it, we hope. And we'll see what the judge says in a day or two, or a week, or a month or two. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions for Sugar Creek side? Okay. Now, Councilman Hobart, I'm coming back to you. Anything to add for our discussion today?
I appreciate that. Yes, a couple things. One, I saw that Senator Rizzo filed a bill that would undo, in particular, the portion of that crime bill that was passed last year that prohibited local law enforcement from cooperating with or enforcing federal gun laws. To remind everybody, we had an officer, a very young officer in training, killed in Independence, Blaise Madrid Evans, and Kansas City. The person that killed him was a convicted felon and had been stopped weeks before by the Kansas City Police Department and he would have otherwise been charged in federal court at that time with felon in possession of a firearm. The federal courts routinely charge those cases. It's an automatic 5 years in prison, and it's a good way to keep violent folks off the streets. So the fact the legislature passed that was terribly poorly thought out. But the fact that Senator Rizzo is moving to undo that is spectacular. So at our upcoming meetings, whatever we can do to support that, I would highly recommend. The second thing I have is I find it a little disingenuous that our representatives Rowland and Sauls are playing coy about Governor Parsons' speech, because I heard they're actually his speechwriters. That's all I have. Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Councilwoman DeLucci.
Oh, hold on. I think we need equal time.
Oh,
I'm
no.
sorry.
You had that opportunity.
Can I just equal time?
Absolutely.
Councilman Hobart, thank you for that shout out. And if you want, I'll write your speeches too. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Rory, Karen needs you to write my speeches.
Oh, I'll do it. Absolutely.
Not
Have
him.
you do it. If you were happy with the governors, we'll do that for you too.
Okay, I just have a few things. Since the 1980s, I moved here and I've been working on independence. Here we are, 40 years later, and what am I doing? Working on independence. During that period of time, I went to Jeff City. I cannot pay attention to what is being said in Jeff City until April. In April, okay, maybe they'll move. But until April, you're going to spend your time and nothing's going to happen. So what I tell people is April, May, that's important. Before then, we have a lot more stuff to do in independence. We have got to pay attention. I mean, thank you, Mr. Larson. 24 Highway is outstanding. And they did it. And I appreciate it. You know, I do tend to say no on city council stuff. And before I say no, I tell you why. You don't have to agree with me. I give out my phone number so people can call me. But I don't make transactional votes. I look to the city and I look to the citizens. And that's how I vote. So I think that's it. Bye.
I just want to say I was responsible for that speech.
Yeah, I know. I heard all about it. I have sources.
I'm going to caveat that a little bit with hey, we still need to have legislative briefings on Fridays once a month. So I don't want to hold off until April for that.
And I'm not saying, I'm saying me.
Very good.
Stuff has happened. Stuff has to be done.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Any other comments from our elected representatives? I'm going to look around the room first. Any other comments from our representatives online? Representative Sauls?
No, I don't have any unless anybody has any questions for me. You know, once again, thanks for having me on. I think this is important. I appreciate everyone's interest, and you know, if you need any help with anything, reach out to me. I will look and I'll look on that question about the sites and the money, the $25 million. I'll look at that, and I'll also, with regard to Dr. Hurl, I'll look into the transportation part of that. I think it's very important as well. I recognize it's something we don't do as well as we should. So just know that I'm with you. I support it. If it's up to me, I will absolutely get it funded. But you know, unfortunately, there are other people in the building too. So but I will try, and I think it's important, and I appreciate everyone's time, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Hobart, any other final?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, again, legislative agenda, please feel free to take it with you. On the way out the door, we have the quarterly newsletter for the Chamber of Commerce as well. Interested again on February 2nd, at-large city council candidate forum at Fairmont Community Center. Candidate for our mayor's candidate forum on February 3rd at the Fairmont Community Center. Governor Parsons for January 24th luncheon. If you don't already have your tickets, we're very sorry. And February 16th luncheon featuring Zach Walker, city manager. And before I conclude today, I'll throw a real quick shout out there for 74 years old, lost a great today with Meatloaf. So any of you who grew up in the 80s listening to Paradise Behind the Dashboard Lights, little honor for him. Thank you all. We'll adjourn.